Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm Will Robinson-Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Got the full team out for an all-important crewed mission, the first crewed mission to start this calendar year. Our Stephen Young is running the technical operations of our broadcast. Adam Bernstein is out in the field, manning our tracking cameras. And Michael Kane also doing some still photography in addition to Michael as well. We'll also be joined in a little bit by our friends Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck Briggs. Got the full slate out to bring you all the angles on the Axiom 3 mission. Set to launch from Historic Launch Complex 39A. Taking a live look at that right now. As that bird flies, so too soon will this Falcon 9 rocket. Sitting ready at the pad, crew access arm extended, getting ready to receive the crew within the next 30 minutes. We're now T-minus 2 hours, 30 minutes, 3 seconds and counting to the planned instantaneous liftoff window of this AX-3 mission. At the top of this Falcon 9 rocket is a SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle. This will be the third time that this Dragon is flying up to orbit. It first carried NASA's Crew 4 quartet of astronauts on the last mission prior to the crew swap agreement with Roscosmos. It was on AX-5 that they started flying cosmonauts in this commercial crew era of human spaceflight. But the Crew 4 astronauts deemed this Dragon Freedom. This is the newest Dragon to have been added to SpaceX's fleet of Dragons. The 5th Crew Dragon is set to be introduced sometime later this year. We're now T-minus 2 hours, 28 minutes, 14 seconds and counting. Just to catch you up on a busy morning or leading into the afternoon for the AX-3 crew. A little bit of a different timeline than a NASA crewed mission. Crew ingress began about 5 or so minutes ago. Bit of a cloudy day here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. We'll talk about the weather conditions and what the outlook looks like right now. Here's a grander view of Pad 39A. You can see the less than Chamber of Commerce conditions, I'll put it like that, out at the pad. As far as the readiness of the vehicle, SpaceX and Axiom Space have said that both Dragon and Falcon are ready to support this mission. And in the run-up to these launch operations, we had the opportunity to speak with Axiom Space President Matt Ondler, who said that Dragon is ready, Falcon is ready, the crew is ready. Now it's up to the Florida weather. Now T-minus 2 hours, 26 minutes, 49 seconds and counting. Coming up, the next big milestone, which we should have eyes on at this point, will be the Dragon hatch closure. That's coming up at T-minus 1 hour 55 minutes. Put that in real time. It's just about 2:54 p.m. Eastern, or 21:54 UTC for our friends joining us from around the world. Really appreciate everyone who is joining us today. We have just about 1,900 folks that are popping in the live chat joining us for a crew launch mission today. If you haven't already, there's a great way that you can help support what we do here at Spaceflight Now. If you just hit the like button and share the stream, that'll help the YouTube algorithm to bring this live coverage to more folks around the world for this all-European space flight to the International Space Station. We're also powered by channel members, so I want to thank all of the folks who are supporting us with channel membership. If you're not a channel member, now's a great time to become one, since it includes discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com, as well as access to member-only videos. Posted one of the crew helicopter flyby earlier today, so you can go ahead and check that out if you are a channel member. Most importantly, perhaps for today, you can get access to the 4K live views of this and all the launches from the Cape. So what better way to start accessing a 4K launch than with crew heading up to space? And of course, be remiss if I went any further without thanking our wonderful moderators in the live chat. Really appreciate the team who helps support what we do here at Spaceflight Now. Keep the conversation copacetic and helping everyone have a good time as we get ready to talk about this crew heading up to the ISS. So thanks to Dremwolf. I see you already hard at work there. Appreciate you. Thanks for being with us today. And lastly, if you'd like to join in the conversation about this mission or anything else we've got coming up here on the Space Coast, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. We'll be monitoring that. It's a great way to join in the conversation as well as support what we do here at Spaceflight Now. We'll also be monitoring the live chat for some of our member comments as well. We're now T-minus 2 hours, 23 minutes, 49 seconds and counting. Jumping ahead a little bit in the timeline, but want to answer this member question since I'm sure it'll come up from other folks as well. Mystic Images Art asks, will the return of Dragon be off the Florida coastline? If so, when? To the first part of that question, yes, Dragon will splash down off the coast of Florida. Until we get much closer to that splashdown date, we don't have a specific location of where they will splash down. It could be any number of spots off the coast that SpaceX and the Coast Guard are ready to support. The mission itself, they're expected to spend up to 14 days on station. Because this is a private astronaut mission, some of the support teams are a little bit different. So if this were a NASA crewed mission, for example, part of the 45th weather or Space Launch Delta 45, part of their organization Det3 supports the crewed missions that launch from here. However, this time, because this is a private astronaut mission, they are not the ones taking lead on that. That actually falls to a local group that's based here on the Space Coast called Operator Solutions. It's a veteran-owned company, as I mentioned, headquartered here on the Space Coast, ready to support missions not only for Axiom Space, but also future flights of Space Perspective, which is a suborbital balloon flight that is significantly cheaper than other private astronaut missions. And I use that in relative terms. I believe a seat aboard Space Perspective's Spaceship Neptune is what their capsule is called. Can fit up to 8 people, including the pilot. The seat will run you $50,000 if I remember the price tag correctly, but the flight itself lasts 6 hours in total. 2 hours on the ascent, 2 hours at apogee, and 2 hours on the descent. And then you'll be brought back on their ship to Port Canaveral where you'll offload. So flight's expected to start, I believe, if I remember correctly, at the end of this year or early next year. So for those wanting a less expensive opportunity to see a bit of the overview effect, not quite as dramatically as, say, Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin's New Shepard, but at a fraction of the cost. There are increasingly more options these days as we get closer to a more expansive space economy, certainly heading up to low Earth orbit and below. We're now T-minus 2 hours, 19 minutes, 51 seconds and counting. I want to thank Mel Roberts Harold, one of our wonderful channel members, for a $5 super chat. Says, so glad to have Spaceflight now and all the terrific folks that are part of bringing the launches to our living room. Well, that is certainly our goal, to make launches not only accessible to everyone around the world, but also to help everyone be more informed about what we're seeing, and also in case something is not quite nominal, we want to help you understand it as best we can in real time. Now T-minus 2 hours, 18 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. I was talking about the weather just a little bit ago. The 45th Weather Squadron forecast 80% odds of favorable weather for liftoff at 4:49 p.m. Eastern. As you might be able to guess with the views that we've got here. Let's see if I can switch over here. The cumulus cloud rule is one of the weather watch items for today. Hoping some of those clouds will be less thick once we're closer to launch. They're also watching the flight through precipitation rule in case there's a little bit of rain that comes up later. And also because this is a crewed flight, they are monitoring the ascent corridor recovery area, which extends from the Cape all the way up through off the coast of Ireland. And as I mentioned, the group operator solutions, they're going to be some of the first who would be responsive on the off chance that something were to go awry. We're now T-minus 2 hours, 15 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. If for whatever reason SpaceX is not able to launch the AX-3 crew today, normally we would have a 24-hour backup option. However, a launch on Friday does not present a favorable setup for docking with the International Space Station. Therefore, the next opportunity to launch would be coming up on Saturday. 48-hour delay, roughly. It'll be slightly adjusted up in the launch time. But just for general ballpark numbers, we'll call it a 48-hour delay. In the off chance that that happens, the weather at launch is better. It's 95% favorable, with liftoff winds being the primary concerns. However, the additional risk criteria, both the upper level wind shear as well as conditions along the ascent corridor, are very much not in the odds of, or in the favor of this mission. Upper level wind shear would be low to moderate conditions, and the ascent corridor recovery risk is high. That's on Saturday. Today there is low upper level wind shear, and the ascent corridor recovery weather is low to moderate. So, as is the case with all launches, but especially when crew are on board, weather is hugely important and something we will be closely watching, and we'll give you updates on as we continue on through the count. We're now T-minus 2 hours, 14 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. We're now T-minus 2 hours, 12 minutes, 37 seconds and counting. At this point, the launch crew should be going through the Dragon suit leak check. Again, hatch closure is coming up at T-minus 1 hour, 55 minutes. Or if you're looking at a real clock, it's about 2:54 Eastern. I referenced our Ace Photography crew a little bit earlier. If you're not already following them on X, these are their handles. We'll be posting some of their launch photos after the mission, as well as we'll be sharing them on our main Spaceflight Now X channel, as well as on Threads if you're on that social platform, and Facebook. You can find Adam Bernstein at ABurnNYC. Michael Kane is at MD Kane Jr. And I'm also on X at W_Robinson Smith. I want to go ahead and step through the countdown timeline with some of the main fueling events coming up for the Falcon 9 rocket. little bit different than a Starlink mission. If you were here with us for our live static fire coverage, this will be familiar for you. But if you weren't, this will be for everyone else. We'll start at T-minus 45 minutes when the SpaceX launch director will give their go for the start of propellant load. Normally that would be followed by prop load, but again, this is a crewed mission, so things a little bit adjusted. At T-minus 42 minutes, the crew access arm that you see there set up connected to the Dragon spacecraft, that will retract and swing out away from it. Then T-minus 39 minutes, the Dragon's launch escape system is armed. It's important because if there were to be anything wrong with the Falcon 9 vehicle, it would give the Dragon the ability to quickly get the crew to safety. Then at T-minus 35 minutes, things start to feel a little bit more familiar for those who are longtime watchers of SpaceX missions and know this part of the equation. Propellant load begins at this point. Starts with both the rocket-grade kerosene, or RP-1, being loaded onto the first and second stages of the vehicle. At the same time, liquid oxygen will be loaded onto the first stage of the Falcon 9. At T-minus 16 minutes, second stage liquid oxygen loading will begin. Before that, we'll see the big vent from the strongback. Happens as the feed lines are chilled. Comes up at about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, give or take. At T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps of the 9 Merlin 1D engines. Protects them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then again, here's where we diverge a little bit. T-minus 4 minutes, the Dragon will transition to internal power. At about 2 minutes out, liquid oxygen loading should be complete. At that point, the Falcon 9 will be fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. 45 seconds out, the SpaceX launch director will give their go for liftoff. And because this is a crewed mission, we may hear some final farewells from the AX-3 commander at some point in this countdown timeline. So there's not an exact moment for when that will happen, but of course, we will work to bring you that audio as soon as that happens. So, you know, things are a little bit different with a commercial mission, so we will be as fluid as we can. T-minus 3 seconds is the engine ignition sequence. And of course, if all engines are healthy and ignite, we'll have liftoff of the Falcon 9 supporting the AX-3 mission. 4:49 p.m. Eastern, 21:49 UTC. We're now T-minus 2 hours, 7 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. We're now T-minus 2 hours, 5 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. Getting some views here inside.
All right, so they're on the right.
We're now T-minus 2 hours, 2 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. We just got word from SpaceX that the crew seats have rotated. They've completed their suit leak checks, and they've also done a good comms check. Little bit ahead of 2 hours from the planned liftoff. Things are moving along well with a countdown so far. Coming up, the next big milestone will be Dragon hatch closure. That's in just about 7 minutes. T-minus 1 hour, 55 minutes. We're now T-minus 1 hour, 59 minutes, 49 seconds and counting. Just getting a quick video recap here of some of the major milestones that happened. This is the crew after they left their suit-up room and got into their Teslas, drove over to the launch pad at Launch Complex 39A. There's Commander Michael López-Alegría on the left, Walter Villadei on the right, or on the, excuse me, reverse that. Commander Mike L.A. was on the right and Walter Villadei was on the left. This will be the first all-European flight, both for a commercial space mission as well as flying aboard a Dragon spacecraft. Here's the crew as they were walking across that crew access arm that you see there. And this is a live view of the crew inside the vehicle. So Commander Michael López-Alegría is on your left, and pilot Walter Villadei is on the right. This is just outside of the Dragon spacecraft. They are preparing for the hatch closure. Or they are, of course, the hatch is already closed at this point. They are going to be checking the seal on this hatch now. Taking a look on the right-hand side of this room, well, they just popped away from it, but those two insignia that you saw on the right, you had the NASA, what's lovingly called the meatball version of the logo, and the SpaceX X logo. Part of the new tradition for these crewed missions launching with SpaceX, both as part of the commercial crew program as well as on these private astronaut missions, is for them to sign their names by the insignia ahead of the crew ingress. So all of the missions that are launching as part of NASA's commercial crew program will sign near the NASA meatball, and all the private astronaut missions, as well as the Inspiration 4 flight, which was led by Jared Isaacman, and included 3 other non-professional astronauts. They all signed by the X as well. Now T-minus 1 hour, 57 minutes and counting. Taking a look at a split view from outside of the SpaceX Crew Dragon Freedom, getting ready for its 3rd flight, supporting the AX-3 crew. And that's the view inside the Dragon. So just beyond the view inside the Dragon that we're seeing will be the 2 mission specialists just off camera. On the left-hand side of your screen is the first Turkish astronaut who will fly to the space station. That is Alper Gezeravci. The other mission specialist is ESA Reserve astronaut Marcus Wandt. Both gentlemen will be making their first flight to space with this AX-3 mission. And Marcus Wandt is actually the first of these astronaut reserve astronauts, part of the ESA astronaut class of 2022 who will fly to space. They are not full-time employees of ESA, as is the case with the main astronaut corps. There were 10 others who were selected alongside Marcus for these commercial opportunities to go to low Earth orbit. So ESA looking at expanding different ways to get a number of astronauts and a number of countries up to the International Space Station. We're now T-minus 1 hour, 54 minutes, 22 seconds and counting.
Yeah, thanks, Jake.
All right, good.
We're now T-minus 1 hour, 53 minutes, 11 seconds and counting. Do have confirmation that the leak check is good. That was the call, and the reception was the voice you heard for just a moment. That was Commander Michael López-Alegría acknowledging that crew heard. The next big milestone is not going to be for some time. We do have lots to talk about between now and then, but there will be a T-minus 1 hour weather briefing ahead of the start of propellant load. If we're able to get a clean audio feed of that, we'll of course bring that to you as well. We're on T-minus 1 hour, 52 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. T-minus 1 hour, 51 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Want to let folks know, especially if you've got friends or family or you yourself are watching this launch live anywhere on or around Florida's Space Coast, this will be a return to landing site landing of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. Here's an overview of the flight plan for this mission. But just to let folks know who are in this area, you'll likely hear a sonic boom as the first stage booster is making its way back down towards landing zone 1 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. That landing is going to be coming up at T-plus 7 minutes and 40 seconds. So just under 8 minutes after liftoff is when we'll have that event come up. And given the amount of clouds that are hanging around the area, it may keep the sound pretty thoroughly localized, so it could have a little bit of extra reverberation. So maybe extra punchy. We're now T-minus 1 hour, 50 minutes, 5 seconds and counting to the planned liftoff of the AX-3 mission. We're now T-minus 1 hour, 47 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. I want to thank Paul for $10 super chat. Really appreciate that, Paul. Who says, I'm more than happy to watch this coverage here, and I'm sure this has been asked and explained already, but why is SpaceX not streaming this on their channel? Well, we don't fully know the rationale for SpaceX's choice to no longer stream content here on YouTube. That is just a decision that was made last year that was something that they were no longer wanting to do, is stream their missions to YouTube. But we are more than happy to provide live launch coverage for all the missions from here at the Cape, as well as covering flights from Vandenberg Space Force Base, as well as other places around the country as well. We're now T-minus 1 hour, 46 minutes, 20 seconds and counting to the planned liftoff of the AX-3 mission. We're now T-minus 1 hour, 40 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. In the last couple of hours before we get ready to send off the 4 astronauts of the AX-3 mission, we had the opportunity to speak with Cam Gafarian. He is the executive chairman for Axiom Space. Talked about a number of things, but of course, focusing on the mission today and highlighting the experience of the crew that's getting ready to launch on board, led by Commander Mike L.A., who will be making his 6th trip to space in just a little bit. Here is Cam talking about flying with a crew who 3 out of the 4 of them are flying for their first time, but they've got a lot of experience under their belt. Here's what he had to say about that.
This is people who are not just regular citizens, you know, a businessman that wants to go to space, people that are more professional, but not necessarily professional astronauts, if you will. Hopefully we will have more of that in the future.
And that was Cam. Of course, this will be the 3rd private astronaut mission that Axiom Space is chartering up to the orbiting outpost. They have already been approved to fly the AX-4 mission as NASA's 4th sanctioned private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. That's set to launch sometime this fall. There hasn't been a specific flight date for that or the full crew that's been announced, but this will be led by former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. Both she and Commander López-Alegría share responsibility for launching and leading these crew astronaut missions, these private astronaut missions to the station. A T-minus 1 hour, 38 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Yeah. I'm sending you the crew video right now. Okay. Yeah. We're now T-minus 1 hour, 33 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. As we mentioned, this will be the first all-European private astronaut mission heading up to the International Space Station. A group of astronauts representing a variety of countries, Italy, Turkey, and Sweden, in addition to Spain being represented by the commander of the mission, Michael López-Alegría, former NASA astronaut. So to get acclimated and familiar with the quartet of gentlemen that are about to head up to the space station, let's go ahead and introduce you now to the 4 astronauts of the AX-3 mission. The 4 astronauts of the Axiom 3 mission are getting ready to launch to the International Space Station. The 3rd private astronaut mission is set to head to the orbiting outpost on board a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft named Freedom, which will launch from Historic Launch Complex 39A. Before the crew departs the planet, half for the first time, let's get to know the astronauts of the AX-3 mission. Mission specialist Marcus Wandt will be making his first trip to space of any kind. Like many Europeans who came before him, he's flying the European Space Agency flag and has been training hard since his selection as part of the astronaut class of 2022. However, he's representing a new type of astronaut for ESA. Wandt is a member of ESA's so-called reserve pool of astronauts. In a nutshell, Wandt is not a career astronaut who's a full-time employee of ESA, but rather one of 11 who may get opportunities to fly to space through commercial ventures. Wandt, through the backing of Sweden, was granted a ticket to ride through this opportunity provided by Axiom Space.
Being a part of pioneering a new way for Europe to gain access to space and to increase the frequency and the presence of not only European presence, but also European science and the benefit for what we can do here on Earth, and that brings everyone forward.
Before becoming a member of the astronaut reserve, Wandt served in the Swedish Air Force as a fighter pilot and a test pilot. Having served his country for more than a decade, he said this was a pivotal time for Sweden's flag to fly on the ISS once again.
Sweden is celebrating 500 years of independence this year. The 6th of June, 1523, Gustav Vasa was selected the King of Sweden by an assembly in Strängnäs, 59 kilometers west of Stockholm. And after his election, Sweden left the Kalmar Union with Denmark and Norway, making Sweden an independent country, which has been ever since.
The distinction is noted in the mission patch with the 500 at the base of it. The 100 that's across it represents the other mission specialist on this AX-3 flight, Alper Gezeravci. Like Sweden, Turkey is also marking an important anniversary, its centennial. And like Wandt, Gezeravci also served his country's Air Force as a fighter pilot. He spent 15 years flying several types of aircraft and served as the Standardization Squadron Academic Wing Commander. He says that training was a key primer to becoming an astronaut.
As a fighter pilot, we have already went through several years long hard training, both physically and mentally, how to handle different scenarios in both normal, as well as emergency conditions. So having this experience and being able to reflect this into the space-related trainings that we have been going through for the last 5.5, almost 6 months long period, it really gave all of us the chance to be able to reflect that experience and the knowledge and how to handle all the new information and the training that we need to digest.
44-year-old Gezeravci is the first astronaut from Turkey. He applied for the role among 36,000 others and was one of just 30 who was called up to the Turkish capital of Ankara for the final approval. It's a responsibility that he says is not only important to the country, but also to him as someone who long dreamed about being among the stars.
As a person who had to limit his dreams all the way from beginning relating to the space, and which was limited with the sky that I could see with my bare eyes, that is not a result for our future generations. Now their path is open, and this space flight is not a destination of our journey. This is just the beginning.
Gezeravci isn't the only member of this quartet who's finally living out his spacefaring dreams. So too is the AX-3 pilot, Walter Villadei. Unlike his 2 mission specialist crewmates, Villadei has considerably more experience training to become an astronaut. He's currently a colonel in the Italian Air Force and oversees its commercial spaceflight initiatives here in the U.S. His flight to the ISS also comes during the centennial celebration of the Italian Air Force.
It's very important to us because it's an important opportunity to really celebrate and recall the core values of our armed forces, which is the commitment in defense of our country and our allies, but also the professionalism of people that every day is devoting and serving the country in trying to do their best in the job they have, and of course the passion of flying.
Moreover, back in 2011, he went through cosmonaut training in Star City, Russia, in the hopes of launching to space on board a Soyuz someday. In a similar vein to ESA's astronaut reserve approach, Villadei says it's important to create these new pathways for more people to get to space.
The partnership with Axiom is right away proving that the world is changing. We are really opening up to a new phase of the commercial spaceflight, the exploitation of the LEO Earth orbit. So whatever and all the things we are doing as an Air Force, first of all, to increase our skills and competencies in the aerospace.
In preparation for this mission, Villadei also had the opportunity to fly a suborbital spaceflight with another commercial provider, Virgin Galactic.
It's definitely a nice platform to test and to strengthen all these training capabilities. So I would say that definitely, in my view, is an added value to put together this combination of different flights. And on top of that, I would say that I think it's really interesting to use this platform to test some preliminary experiments that then afterwards we can scale up and let them fly on ISS.
While Villadei certainly gained a lot of experience on his path to this mission, by far the most prepared AX-3 crew member is its commander, Michael López-Alegría. Preparing for just one mission to space is sometimes a feat only achieved once in a lifetime. But for Commander López-Alegría, this will be his 6th distinct trip to orbit. Only 4 others have launched 7 or more times. It's a record he may achieve before too much longer, as he and former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson are currently the only 2 who share the responsibility of commanding these private astronaut missions.
So I would say that we have some plans in the future to expand our astronaut corps to meet the demands. But for right now, the 2 of us are able to share the load quite nicely, and it's I don't have to tell you, it's quite a privilege to be able to fly to space this often, especially at this point in our careers.
LA, as many call him, began logging hours in space with STS-73 back in 1995.
And liftoff of the Space Shuttle Columbia.
He notched 2 more space shuttle flights and a trip aboard a Russian Soyuz before retiring as a NASA astronaut. He's also in a small club of 9 people who have flown in 3 different spacecraft at launch, now that he's added a SpaceX Crew Dragon to his resume. He says even though his experience in space is far beyond that of his crewmates, they're more than ready for this next leap.
If it isn't evident, it's really fortunate that this is an amazingly prepared crew. I mean, I think this is, for a private astronaut mission, it's exceptional, but really for any mission, the level of training and experiences that these folks bring to our crew is really remarkable. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing that put into practice when we get to orbit.
And while preparing for a mission is a rigorous process once, let alone 6 times, it's a tall task that Mike L.A. says he doesn't want to give up anytime soon.
It never gets old. I mean, I think I have more appreciation with every launch that approaches. I think you put some of these things in the rearview mirror and it helps you put them in perspective. And, you know, the first time you go, you're just sort of hanging on for dear life and enjoying the ride. But I think you appreciate each one a little bit more, especially when you realize just how rare an opportunity it is. So I'm happy to keep doing this. Axiom would definitely like to continue doing private astronaut missions. We'll probably have other commanders in the future, but as long as they ask me to fly, my hand will be raised.
And our thanks to the quartet of the AX-3 crew for speaking with those of us in the press, allowing us to share their story in the run-up to this historic first all-European flight heading up to the International Space Station. Getting ready to launch, T-minus 1 hour, 23 minutes, 31 seconds and counting. Hey there everyone, I'm Will Robinson Smith for Spaceflight Now. We are now T-minus 1 hour, 7 minutes and 52 seconds away from the planned liftoff of the AX-3 mission. Those 4 European astronauts getting ready to head up to the orbiting outpost, set to do upwards of 30 different experiments on board, more than 50 outreach opportunities as well. And who better to talk about science than with one of the fine folks representing an agency supporting the science that's launching. I'm joined, as we are fortunately by a lot of these crew missions, by Patrick O'Neill with the ISS National Lab. Pat, always good to see you.
Thank you very much. That was quite the intro. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, you know, you've been a busy man, traveling around the country promoting science, heading up to station. In fact, you just got back from CES, I believe, right?
I was in, CES Las Vegas. It was a lot of fun. They had about 150,000 attendees. We had the chance to be involved in multiple sessions. We had NASA astronaut Rajachari out with us talking about living and working in space, the types of science he was working on while he was on station, and then also had some of our partners talking about the R&D that they're doing up there and why they're doing it in space.
Yeah, and for those who may have missed that launch, Rajachari, NASA astronaut who was the commander of the AX-3 mission, obviously was very busy when he was on orbit. These guys are going to be quite busy as well. The ISS National Lab, as I mentioned, Team You Up, is supporting a number of the science operations that are going to be happening on orbit. Talk about some of the ones that are sort of highest of mind for you. I know, I believe there's going to be a couple different experiments dealing with stem cells.
Yeah, there is. Great tee up. We have a variety of partnerships with entities like the National Stem Cell Foundation, the Sanford Stem Cell Institute over at the UC San Diego. Both of these teams have launched investigations to the space station previously, all of which looking at trying to find ways to improve therapeutics for all of us here on Earth, as well as those that are living off planet. So again, this is a really exciting time because these missions, not only do they open up access for further R&D that can be done on station, but obviously they open up access for people that literally get to space. So again, these missions, it's always something new with them, and really excited about the science that they're going to be able to support during this 2-week-long mission.
Yeah, and having those 14 days, obviously, a little bit shorter than the long duration 6 months that the regular crew rotation missions get. But, getting these more regular opportunities to send science up and retrieve it back, how important is that for the ISS National Lab, not just to have the opportunity to increase the amount of science flying, but to be able to get that return on a much quicker time frame?
Well, I think that's the portion right there that you just hit on, the return on that investment. I mean, it's important for us to send science up, but if you're not getting any knowledge, if you're not getting anything that's gained out of that, and being able to bring that back to the research communities so that other people can leverage the space station, we're building out use cases like crazy. As of right now, we have more than 500 peer-reviewed papers that have been focused on research that's been done on the space station. And all that's going to do is help to inform future investigators on the types of areas of opportunity that are truly ripe so that we can leverage this space station to the max, to its fullest capacity over the remaining years that it has, and then also have that peaceful transition, if you will, to commercial destinations in low Earth orbit so that they know the areas that are ripe with opportunity and really push the boundaries of innovation.
Yeah, now we were actually talking with some folks with Axiom Space a little bit before everyone kind of got in their ready positions to support this launch today. And he was saying, exactly what you were talking about just now, the continued partnership with organizations like the ISS National Lab, because obviously Axiom Space is going to be launching their own free-flying space station. So talk about, from the ISS National Lab's perspective, how you guys are sort of looking at this transition to commercial LEO destinations and what that transition process is like, in this space where you still have time, and have an ISS up there.
So this is my perspective. When people sit there and ask me about the, kind of the legacy, if you will, of the space station, I think that when we talk about the notion of commercialization, it has evolved. When ISS National Lab first kind of came in to be, there was only 1 or 2 companies that had facilities that were available for people to leverage on the space station. Now there's over 30 commercially owned and operated facilities on the ISS. And so I think that that's really an exciting element. It's not just Fortune 500 companies that are doing R&D on the space station, but rather it's a lot of companies that are validating technologies, validating platforms on the space station that could then be used in things like future commercial LEO destinations. So that's a really exciting development for us. And I think that that's an area that we're going to continue to try to pursue and work with partners so that they can advance technologies so that whenever we do have these commercial CLDs, they're not just novel places for you to do R&D, but they are first-class research facilities that have all the same bells and whistles that you would expect to have in a laboratory setting here on Earth. And that's only to contribute towards better science return for all of us here on this planet, and again, for those that are living and working off this planet.
And, normally there's a little bit of I won't say downtime because you're always busy with one thing or another, obviously either preparation for the science itself or outreach talking about it. But your dance card is quite full right now. Of course, you've got AX3 now just over an hour away from launching, but coming right up in just a couple of weeks, you've got NG-20, or 20, Northrop Grumman's 20th Commercial Resupply Services mission, which is going to be launching not from this pad, but not too far off over at Space Launch Complex 40 with SpaceX for the first time.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun launch in and of itself. So there's going to be, I think, more than 25 sponsored investigations from the ISS National Lab on that one as well. But then after that, you have the Crew 8 launch, and then we're going to have SpaceX CRS-30. One of the projects that's going to be flying on SpaceX CRS-30 is going to be a continuation project from the National Stem Cell Foundation. So the team that's launching an investigation on AX3, they're going to be launching an investigation on SpaceX 30 as well. So it's a really, really busy time on station. These astronauts, when they're out there for those 2 weeks, they're going to be quite busy. But then the astronauts, the other astronauts that are on station, they're also going to be working quite a bit on a lot of R&D over the next couple of weeks and months. And that's a really exciting thing for us because, who knows what we're going to learn based on the types of science that they're going to be executing.
And, one of the things that they've adjusted from AX1 now to AX3 is sort of smoothing out the timeline for the astronauts on station. They tried to pack in a lot for AX1, as we all remember, and it was a little bit of a congested timeline. So do you think that kind of paring things down, really focusing on these 30, will give them not only time to acclimate, but also time to really appreciate and do the science as thoroughly as well as possible?
Well, I think part of what you also mentioned too is up front was the fact that they're going to be doing a variety of public engagement outreach opportunities as well. So, I think that in and of itself should be something that's fun for them to be able to say, these are the types of experiments we're supporting, but by golly, we're in space. We're on the International Space Station. We're having the chance to go out there and work alongside these professional astronauts and live and work in space. I mean, what's cooler than that? So I think that, hopefully there is that ability to kind of compartmentalize, as you said, where yes, we're supporting a lot of great science, but we're also having the chance to talk about it and really enjoy the fact that here we are in low Earth orbit doing something that very few people have the chance to do.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick O'Neill, supporting the ISS National Lab. We're excited to see you guys launch aboard this mission.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And of course, we're just now right about at the hour mark, 30 seconds away from our next milestone that's going to be coming up with the launch readiness weather briefing. That'll be coming up before the go-ahead for the start of propellant load. They're going to take that poll at T-minus 45 minutes. The weather briefing is coming up in about the next 20. So we'll go ahead and pause for now. We'll be back on the mic in just a little bit, but stay tuned. We got a launch coming up if the weather holds. We'll be right back. We're now T minus 54 minutes. 51 seconds and counting. Coming up, our next milestone is going to be the call for the start of propellant load. If the go-ahead for propellant load is issued, fueling will start at T minus 35 minutes with both the loading of rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen. We're now T minus 51 minutes, 37 seconds and counting. Before we go ahead and get to the point in which the launch director will give their call on the start of propellant load, let's go ahead and talk about where this vehicle will be going once it leaves the pad. Let's talk trajectory, shall we? The Falcon 9 rocket will launch from Historical Launch Complex 39A and will head in a northeasterly trajectory once it leaves the pad. As has been the case with all the crewed missions recently since AX2, I believe, this will be a return to landing site mission with the booster coming back for a landing at landing zone 1 about 8.5 minutes or a little bit less than that after liftoff. Taking a look back now at the road to the pad for the 4 astronauts of the AX mission. This is, as noted by the graphic on screen, a replay recorded earlier of those Teslas with the crew rolling up to the pad. You're taking a look inside with the 4 astronauts. These are our 2 mission specialists here, our commander and pilot shaking hands before they egress from their Tesla vehicle. And as typically the case with these crew missions, they do the lean back, taking a look at the vehicle that will support their ride to space. It's them crossing the crew access arm as they head over to the Dragon capsule Freedom, which now you're seeing the inside of. On your left is Commander Michael López-Alegría. To the right is pilot Walter Villadei, representing Italy. Commander Mike L.A. is a dual citizen of both the United States and Spain. We're now T-minus 49 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. About 4 minutes away from the point in which the launch director will have their pull on the startup propellant load.
Polling is complete. Both Dragon and Falcon teams have pulled go for launch escape arm, propellant load, and launch. Stand by for abort instructions. T-minus 45 minutes. Both control rooms go into lockdown and remain in that state until the launch escape system is disarmed. All operators are to remain at their console and maintain a sterile cockpit until MD confirms successful disarming of the launch escape system following orbit insertion or propellant offload in the event of a scrub. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD and they will approve aborting the countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold, hold, hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into launch abort. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off and relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count. Operators advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. Launch control at this time. You may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Launch control copies, proceeding with arming crew arm for movement.
And we hear those good call-outs from the SpaceX launch team. We're taking a look inside at the 4 astronauts of the AX-3 mission. As you heard, they
Well,
were
there you heard it. We are
given the go-ahead for the start of propellant load. And the crew access arm is now beginning to retract, as you see here on your screen. These are some views from on board the crew access arm. You see these views from our friend Pete Carstens at Max Q Productions. A ground view of the crew access arm swinging away. Coming up at T-minus 38 minutes is when the Dragon launch escape system will be armed. We heard that call out that they've completed retraction of the crew access arm. We're now T-minus 43 minutes, 36 seconds and counting.
Escape system.
SpaceX Dragon in work.
all right. So
And you heard the call out that they're preparing to arm the launch escape system that we just mentioned. Now T-minus 42 minutes, 48 seconds and counting.
Closed arming launch escape system.
SpaceX copies.
Because this is a crewed launch, we're working to make sure we bring in the mission audio when it comes in and out. It's a bit of a song and dance with the SpaceX commentary, so we're doing our best to make sure that you're hearing those call-outs as they happen in real time. Now T-minus 42 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. We do have confirmation that the launch escape system has been armed. Next milestone coming up is the start of actual propellant load. That's coming up at T-minus 38 minutes, or excuse me, T-minus 35 minutes. As we do have a couple minutes before the start of fueling, I do want to bring you another part of our conversation with some of Axiom Space leadership. Of course, not only are they coordinating these private astronaut missions to the International Space Station, Axiom Space is also in the process of preparing to build its own free-flying space station that will operate on a commercial basis. They're also under contract from NASA to develop the EVA suits, or the spacesuits that the astronauts of the Artemis 3 mission will use when they head to the moon during the Artemis 3 mission. That's set to launch no earlier now than 2026. We talked with Axiom Space's Matt Onler, the president of Axiom Space, about the progress on the suits and when we might get an on-orbit demonstration of them. They also have a contract for suits that will be used aboard the International Space Station as well. So here's Matt Onler talking about the suits.
Yeah, so the spacesuit development's going very well. We just delivered the first 3 training suits to NASA, and it's very much a modern suit. NASA hasn't upgraded or hasn't built a spacesuit in 40 years, and so there's lots of opportunities to modernize the suit to increase flexibility and mobility in the suit. And we're on track to deliver the suit primarily for the Artemis 3 mission. So our suit will be the suit that's worn by the next person on the moon and the first woman on the moon. But we also hope to be able to fly it before then on ISS. One, technically gives us the opportunity to check it out in a space environment. But we also think we have lots of customers that would like to go on a spacewalk as well.
Just to clarify, when you say flight, do you mean outside of station or just put it on within the station module?
Well, I think the ultimate dream would be to do a spacewalk, but being able to take it up into the space environment would be helpful as well. Be able to check out a lot of the electronic system. There's the radiation environment in low Earth orbit is always hard on electronics, and so being able to have an opportunity to test the suit in space would be advantageous.
And our thanks again to Matt Nonler and Axiom Space for giving us an update on the development of those moon-bound suits. We're at T-minus 38 minutes, 43 seconds and counting. Just about 2.5 minutes away from the start of propellant load. Taking a quick look at the live chat here. Want to thank the more than 7,400 of you who are watching live. If you haven't already, first off, thank you so much for spending part of your afternoon with us. Glad to have you aboard for our live coverage of the AX-3 mission. Want to go ahead and re-rack a little bit just for those that are freshly joining us. I'm Will Robinson-Smith for Spaceflight Now. You're watching live coverage of the third Axiom mission. This will be the third private astronaut mission as well to the International Space Station. Launching aboard the vehicle you see at the center of your screen. This is a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, their workhorse vehicle. Up top is their Crew Dragon spacecraft, getting ready to fly for a third time, previously supporting first NASA's Crew 4 quartet of astronauts, as well as the AX-2 mission that launched last year, led by former astronaut Peggy Whitson. Now T-minus 36 minutes, 44 seconds and counting. They are getting ready to start propellant load, coming up in just a minute and 30 seconds, give or take a few. Now T-minus 35 minutes, 8 seconds and counting, coming up on the start of propellant load. Waiting for that call out. Stand by.
All right, right now.
Got it. We do have the call out for the start of propellant load. Rocket grade kerosene is now beginning to flow aboard both the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket, as well as liquid oxygen aboard the first stage. We're now T-minus 33 minutes, 2 seconds and counting. We're on the early side of propellant load, but so far things are moving along nominally. Coming up, the next milestone for fueling will be the start of cryogenic helium being loaded onto the pressure vessels for the first stage. It's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Again, that's coming up in just about 2.5 minutes at T-minus 30 minutes. Do want to thank a few folks for their support. Just taking a quick peek at the live chat. Of course, we're powered by our channel members, but also really appreciate those of you who help support us through the YouTube Super Chat and give us some things to talk about and allow us to thank you for your support as well. Our channel members, Josh King with a very generous $20 Super Chat. Thank you so much, Josh, who says simply, go AX3. SG coming in with a $3 Super Chat. Thank you, SG. A thumbs up pair. Bit of good luck for the crew of the AX3 mission. Sarah Shee with a $5 Super Chat. Thank you so much, Sarah, who says, heavy clouds between St. Pete and us here at the Cape. So thanks for the excellent coverage. You're very welcome, and certainly one of the reasons why we like to make sure we're live for all the missions from here at the Cape and beyond, so that those who can't see it with their own eyes because of weather or whatnot will be able to bring you good launch views as well as keep you informed about what's going on with the mission. AZ Train Granny with a $20 Super Chat. Thank you so much, AZ, who says, been watching a long time. Time to contribute. Well, as a great narrator. Well, thank you so much. That's very kind of you, AZ. We certainly appreciate our longtime viewers, and, you know, for those who are able to help support our coverage, we're very much appreciative of that, but also your viewership is a great reward for us as well. So thank you for the kind words. Callistia Lee with a $20 Super Chat. Thank you so much, Callistia. Good to see you again this evening.
Started.
Well, human.
And we just heard the call out for Stage 1 cryogenic helium load. Came about T-minus 30 minutes, 40 seconds or so. Stephen Ross with a very generous $50 Super Chat. Thank you so much, Stephen. Really, that's very kind of you, sir. Thank you. Simple message saying, love you guys. Realized I just glided past Callistia's comment. Apologies for that. Callistia says, shout out to the mods for all they do, and I will second that. Thanks to our wonderful moderators. She goes on to say it's a highly unappreciated job, and as always, fantastic job to us here at Spaceflight Now. Thank you all. Thank you for your support. We're now T-minus 29 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. Also want to thank Ian James for a $5 super chat and John Lennon for a $5 super chat, who says, your coverage is the best. Thank you so much, John. Love your work with the Beatles. We're now T-minus 29 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. Coming up, the next milestone for fueling will be at T-minus 25 minutes when cryogenic helium is loaded into the storage tanks on the second stage. Second stage cryogenic helium coming up in just a few minutes. We're now T-minus 26 minutes, 19 seconds and counting. As we get ready to launch this rocket, coming up in less than a half an hour, seeing some vapor form around the Falcon 9 first stage booster. Let's go ahead and talk about the first stage that's going to be flying this time for its 5th flight. This is booster 1080 in SpaceX's fleet. This will be its 3rd Dragon flight. Excuse me, 2nd Dragon flight supporting the AX-3 mission. Its first flight, when it was brand new, was back on May 21st, 2023, supporting the AX-2 mission. It was followed up 41 days later on July 1st, launching an important telescope for the European Space Agency Euclid. Then it had a couple of Starlink missions under its belt. First up was August 27th, 2023 for the Starlink Group 6-11 mission. and most recently Starlink 6-24 on October 22nd. Currently, these first stage boosters are certified for 5 flights supporting crew missions. So this booster is at its limit as far as being able to support crew at this point in time. Of course, as SpaceX and NASA are hoping to certify these boosters for increasingly more flights and make reuse a more common occurrence, that number will likely change, and that's something that SpaceX is working towards. But for now, they are capped at 5 missions each for these first stage boosters. We're now T-minus 23 minutes, 41 seconds and counting. Getting some nice close-up shots of the vapor there as fueling continues. It's from our friend Pete Carstens at MaxQ Productions. Again, this is the 5th flight coming up of this Falcon 9 first stage booster, so you can still, well, now that the vapor is clouding out the point I was about to make, but before fueling started, you could still pretty clearly see the SpaceX logo. There we go, the wind shifting a little bit. You could see the blue lettering there on the first stage booster. A little bit higher up, if it wasn't quite as sooty, you could actually read the tail number 80 that's near the inner stage, but I don't think we'll be able to see it just with a little bit of heat between us and the rocket, causing that ripple effect. I see Pete's cruising on up. It should be right about there, Pete, if you could pause there, sir. Oh, yeah, just above where you see the Falcon 9 logo. Like right about there is where the 80 is located and where the tail numbers are placed on the Falcon 9 first stage vehicle. It's a little tough to make it out here. It's fairly small. Thank you so much, Pete. We're now T-minus 22 minutes, 8 seconds and counting. Just a couple of minutes away from the start of the big vent. Another key indication that fueling is moving along smoothly. We're now T-minus 20 minutes, 36 seconds and counting. We're about to come up on the start of the big vent here. And there you see the big vent beginning. Great close-up shot from our friend Pete Carsons at Max Q Productions. This chill down sequence, or excuse me, the this process precedes the start of liquid oxygen loading on board the second stage of the Falcon 9. This venting occurs as the feed lines are being chilled, brought to the correct temperature ahead of that process starting at T-minus 16 minutes. Now T-minus 18 minutes, 34 seconds counting, taking a wide view of the pad there at Launch Complex 39A. Still seeing some clouds hanging around the Cape as we were getting closer to launch. This is our view from the press site, taking a wide look. See the American flag in front of the countdown clock and the pad there in between. As mentioned, there was an 80% chance of favorable weather for liftoff. Now, some clouds hanging around is not necessarily prohibitive to launch, so we'll go ahead and continue to monitor the weather and see if it becomes problematic, but so far fueling continues on track. The big vent getting ready to wrap up in about a minute. Next fueling milestone again coming up is liquid oxygen loading on board the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. We do have an update from SpaceX that they are working no major issues on either Dragon or the Falcon 9. So good news that both the launch vehicle as well as the spacecraft are healthy. From a technical perspective, SpaceX is ready to support the launch of the AX-3 astronauts. I want to thank a few more folks for their support this afternoon. I want to thank Roy Tommy Lengo for a Norwegian Krona 20. Thank you so much, Roy, who says, "Go Marcus" for Norway and for Sweden. Our thanks also to Created with Purpose for a $2 super chat. And we do have confirmation that they are ready to begin Stage 2 LOX load. now T-minus 13 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. I want to thank Bob Witter for a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Bob, who says, thanks for great coverage, as always. Appreciate that. Appreciate your support with channel membership as well. Our thanks to Randall Burnett for a $5 super chat as well, saying Godspeed crew. Here. And to Mary Cochran for a very generous $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Mary. Really appreciate your support this afternoon. We're now T-minus 13 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. I want to thank the more than 13,000 of you who are joining us live for our live coverage of the first crewed mission for 2024. If you haven't already, a great way to help support our coverage as well is quick and easy and free, just by hitting the like button and sharing the stream. That'll help more folks find our live coverage as we come up on the last 13 minutes before the planned launch.
Displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, the displays are so configured, and do you mind if I say a few words here, Jake?
MLA, I do not mind at all. You've got the floor.
So first I want to thank our partners who had the vision and the conviction to help Axiom open access to humans to low Earth orbit, and they are the Italian Air Force and its various ministries of its government, the Space Technologies Research Institutes of Turkey, TÜBİTAK, and the Turkish Space Agency and its ministry, as well as the Swedish National Space Agency in tandem with ESA. And I also want to thank the team. If you're listening to this through an earpiece sitting in Hangar X and Launch Control or in Hawthorne and Mission Control, you're on the team. And the same is true of people who will be sitting at those consoles and consoles just like them, and mission control in Houston and the payload operations and integration center in Huntsville. Same is true for all the trainers that helped us get where we are today with the crew ready to launch. And of course, the engineers, technicians, managers, and executives who over decades designed, assembled, and are now operating the most complex vehicle in the world that we have the privilege to go visit. Same is true for the visionaries who conceived and developed this amazing rocket that we're sitting on and the beautiful and capable capsule that we're sitting in. And if you're in the Rescue Ops Center, you guys are on the team. And of course, so are our friends and families who have given us their love and support from the very first step of this journey. And last but not least, the team at Axiom Space, the people who have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this. So the four of us that are lucky enough to man the good ship Freedom at this point are humbled to be on the team. We're grateful to our teammates, and we are go for launch. Plus ultra.
Copy all, Mike. As we just ticked through T-minus 8 minutes, I'll let you know you've got a whole bunch of people rooting for you here and indeed all over the world. Godspeed, Axiom 3.
And we're hearing some final words from Commander Michael López-Alegría, getting ready to make his second trip up to the International Space Station on board a SpaceX Dragon. And as a point of note, the commander is also the first person to make a second flight on board a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft. Of course, another person who's going to be making a second flight this fall will be Commander Peggy Whitson for the AX-4 mission. We're now T-minus 6 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. We're now just about 20 seconds into the engine chill down sequence. Process of flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, preparing the 9 Merlin 1D engines for ignition, coming up in less than 6.5 minutes. I need like a mini one of those, like over here, because the... Yeah. Could we make one of these buttons work? Okay. Yeah. Because... We're now T-minus 5 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. SpaceX says the launch weather is now 60% favorable for a liftoff, so a bit of a downgrade from the 80%, excuse me, that we heard coming into this mission. Seeing a beautiful sunset shot as the
track. Make a figure for terminal count.
So like
vehicle's now heading into a terminal count. Now T-minus 4 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. The strong back retract sequence is now beginning. You'll see those clamp arms underneath the Dragon's trunk open up, and the transporter erector or the strong back will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9. We'll stay there until liftoff, at which point it will pull back in a much more rapid fashion. You see those clamp arms opening up now? We're at T-minus 4 minutes and counting. Just as a quick note for our countdown clock versus the one you see at the bottom of the screen, ours is in real time. The SpaceX is on just a hair of a delay. And of course, we're going to keep an eye on the weather conditions, as is SpaceX. There's now 3 minutes and 30 seconds to liftoff. Those views were of Mission Control and Hawthorne. Coming up on the final 3 minutes we do have a call out that stage 1 LOX load has wrapped up. Coming up on the final fueling milestone, we'll hear the call for stage 2 LOX load complete. Coming up in just about a minute now.
There is
We're now coming up on the final 2 minutes before the planned liftoff. See the AX-3 crew eagerly waiting for a liftoff. We do have a call out. Stage 2 LOX load is complete. The Falcon 9 now fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. Now a minute 30 before planned liftoff.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
We're now in the final 45 seconds of the count. Should be hearing that final go for launch momentarily. And we did get that go for launch call out. Getting ready for liftoff in 30 seconds. $20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition. And liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket supporting the AX-3 mission, Axiom's third private astronaut mission to the International Space Station, is flying. Now 30 seconds into flight, we're seeing the Falcon 9 careen through the clouds. Let's listen to the roar of the 9 Merlin engines. Falcon 9's engines are throttling down, preparing for max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Falcon 9 now going faster than the speed of sound. Now T plus 1 minute, 15 seconds. Getting some great views from our friend Pete Karstens, keeping that Falcon 9 on screen as it climbs through the clouds. The SpaceX Crew Dragon supporting all 4 of those European astronauts on board. The call for MVAC chill down, conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine for ignition. Coming up on 2 minutes into flight, we're approaching main engine cutoff. We're now 2 minutes, 18 seconds into flight, coming up on main engine cutoff at 2:26, followed by stage separation. And the Merlin vacuum engine igniting, SES-1. Yeah, those we have call-outs, and we're seeing stage separation. Some great onboard camera views. The boost back burn is underway. Thumbs up from the crew. Great indication that they are in good spirits as they are now very much on their way to the International Space Station, still aboard the Falcon 9's second stage. Now coming up on 3.5 minutes into flight. There's the end of the boost back burn. Coming up, the next milestone here is the first stage entry burn, coming up at T plus 6 minutes and 18 seconds. So far, everything nominal with the mission. You see those hypersonic grid fins deploying on the Falcon 9 first stage, helping to steer it back. Making its way now toward Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, landing zone 1. That landing coming up at about T plus 7 minutes and 40 seconds. So unlike a payload, no need to steer away from live launch coverage here. We're going to have a lot of events coming up over the next next 8 or so minutes. We're about a minute and a half away from that entry burn beginning. T plus 4 minutes, 59 seconds and counting. Some great onboard views. On the left-hand side is the Falcon 9 first stage. On the right is the MVAC engine on the Falcon 9 second stage. Of course, this is inside the SpaceX Dragon Freedom for astronauts of the AX-3 mission, enjoying their ride to space. 3 of them making their first trip to orbit with this mission. Commander Michael López-Alegría is flying for the second time on board a Dragon spacecraft. He flew 3 shuttle missions, first one going up in 1995, and 1 trip on a Russian Soyuz spacecraft. I have 6 minutes into flight. Entry burn now underway. And that's the end of the entry burn. Coming up, next milestone is the landing burn at T plus 7 minutes 23 seconds, a little less than a minute away. Around T plus 7 minutes into flight. But landing burn coming up in less than 20 seconds now. That sonic boom is coming up, so if you're in Florida or if you've got some friends here, they are going to know that booster's coming back as the Cape is now in view. Landing legs deploying. And touchdown. And we heard the sonic booms here at the press side. A little bit muted today, but impressive nonetheless. We're now coming up on 8 minutes into flight. The secondary objective of this mission has been met. The first stage booster has gone up. It's come down. And now all eyes are on the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. And it's 4 astronauts heading up to the International Space Station. Our next milestone coming up at T plus 8 minutes and 48 seconds. That is second stage engine cutoff, or SECO 1. That'll be followed at T plus 12 minutes when the Dragon will separate from the second stage. The nose cone will open less than a minute after that. Getting some views inside Control Center at SpaceX HQ in Hawthorne. Now back on the Merlin vacuum engine, wrapping up that burn. And we have a call out that they are in a nominal orbit, getting ready for Dragon separation from the Falcon 9's upper stage coming up in less than 3 minutes, at about 12 minutes on the dot. The AX-3 crew now experiencing microgravity for the first time, 3 of them for the first time on orbit. Pilot Walter Villadei has flown on a suborbital mission before. He flew with Virgin Galactic on that suborbital journey last year. So he's gotten a little bit of the overview effect, but now getting it in its full grandeur as they're on their way to catch up to the International Space Station with docking coming up on Saturday. We're now T plus 10 minutes, 14 seconds and counting into flight. Is this the trunk view? What are we looking at? What is that? Now a little over 11 minutes into flight, coming up on Dragon separation from the second stage. And you see mission specialist Alper over on the far right-hand corner of the Dragon spacecraft, enjoying a little bit of zero-G or microgravity there. We're now 12 minutes into flight, coming up on Dragon separation. And there it is. The SpaceX Dragon Freedom now flying free of the second stage. Coming up, the next event is going to be the nose cone open sequence beginning.
Falcon team, we want to congratulate you on a great ride to orbit. I think you're demonstrating the ultimate in reuse, a reused Commander, a reused Dragon, and a reused Falcon. Or maybe flight experience is a better word. Enjoy space.
And Axiom 3.
Yo, Thurston, as I was saying, it's a team sport. Thank you, guys.
And Axiom 3, this is your launch director here. Walter, Alper, and Marcus. Congrats, welcome to your first flight on Dragon. Mike, on the other hand, welcome to the Dragon Frequent Flyer Club. I imagine you'll have enough miles to qualify for platinum status after this flight. Godspeed, Axiom 3, cheers.
Mark, thanks to you and your team, we're very grateful up here.
So some back
And some of those voices you were hearing were the Bill Gerstenmaier with SpaceX, as well as the AX-3 launch director and Commander Michael López-Alegría. Gerst was the chief engineer on AX-1, as SpaceX is noting. There's some great words exchanged between those now on orbit, heading up to the International Space Station, and the ground teams that helped to make it happen. Views back in.
If she could encode one of the centerline cameras, we could watch the nose cone.
The crew's getting right in.
And that was
Dragon, we copy on the request.
Commander López-Alegría asking for.
And Dragon, we expect that will automatically happen in the state machine here imminently.
Some views so they could see the nose cone sequence opening.
Still traveling.
Okay, we stand by.
Sorry for jumping in and out here, just trying to make sure that as you're hearing those call-outs and conversations between the launch support team and the crew on board, that we're piping that audio in for you. Just a little bit hard because and we're seeing the nose cone opening. The hooks have opened.
We see nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
And confirmation that we're getting nominal.
And for your awareness, we have visors open, crew are well, feeling well.
Copy, great news.
And some good confirmation from Mike LA on board that their visors are open and they're doing well. Nose cone deployment is in process now. You see the stage 2 telemetry information here. We're seeing that telemetry data here. The Dragon following along with the second stage for now on that blue line that you saw, higher one. Now T plus 17 minutes, 47 seconds and counting into this mission so far. And there goes the nose cone starting to open up. The camera is right up on that nose cone as it's opening up. We're now T plus 20 minutes, 7 seconds and counting. We are hoping to have a post-launch interview coming up in the next several minutes, so hang around for that. Talk a little bit about European spaceflight. But in the meantime, I want to thank some of the folks who have helped support our live launch coverage up to this point. Mary Cochran with the $10 super chat. Some of these coming in before liftoff, so apologies as we were getting right down to the nitty-gritty, but definitely want to acknowledge everyone who helped make this live stream possible today. Marcus Gallegos with a $5 super chat, one of our channel members. who said, "Good luck to everyone. We hope you have a safe and prosperous journey in space and a safe return home." Busra for we have a Turkish currency, 1045. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the support. Marcus Gallegos gifting a Spaceflight Now membership as well. Thank you so much, Marcus, for your generosity. Mark Asada with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Mark, who says, "Love what you do and do what you love." Indeed, that's what brings us back every time for all these launches. Charles McMahon with a $10 super chat. A very happy pair. Thank you so much, Charles. Groundhog with a $5 super chat. Make love, not war. A message of peace, always welcome. Doug Live Northport with a $5 super chat, also supporting the message of peace. I have a message in Turkish that unfortunately not able to read right now. Let's see if I can run that through Google Translate, but thank you so much.
Environments look good for suit doffing, and the cabin camera is soon to be configured. Your go for suit doffing.
Copy. We'll put 4.012 in work.
All right.
That call out allowing the crew to take off their flight suits, get cozy as they cruise on up to the International Space Station over the next day and a half or so. Some more Turkish support for Alper, the first Turkish astronaut heading up to the space station. $20 super chat from Callistia Lee. Thank you so much, Callistia, who says, "Go Falcon, go Dragon crew, and go Axiom 3.
External.
You can also.
And that just confirming that the cameras are now pointing out, so the crew has a little bit of privacy, so they can go ahead and take off their flight suits. Thanks to Iris for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Iris, who says, "I'm on Earth and feel so excited. Can only imagine how the crew is feeling right now." Yes, indeed, especially for the three who are making it up to orbit for the very first time. Our thanks to Riot Siege for a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Riot, who is watching from Canada. SG coming back in with a $10 super chat. Thank you, SG. Channel member Nelson Reyes, good to see you again, sir, who says, "Thank you for the outstanding coverage." Iris back once again with a $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Iris, who says, "Enjoy space for all of us here on Earth." Great coverage, guys. Thank you so much, Iris, for supporting the coverage this afternoon. William Settle with the $20 super chat. No message, but just a good bit of support. Really appreciate the generosity, William. And overall shot with an 11 Turkish dollars super chat. Thank you so much. And NGA with 110 in Turkish currency. Really appreciate that, NGA. Thank you so much for the generosity. Who says, "Peace at home, peace in the world." Great message for peace for space flight is something that we all celebrate. And D-Jocks, also with a donation of 110 in Turkish currency, who says, "Greetings from Turkey and thank you for the great coverage." Parentheses, beautiful voice, by the way. Thank you so much, D-Jocks. Really appreciate the kind words. William Settle with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, William. Really appreciate that. Congratulations on a successful manned launch. Yes, our first crewed launch of 2024. First of many, in fact. We've got the Crew 8 mission coming up in just about a month from now, if you can believe it. So lots more busy times here on the Space Coast as far as crewed missions heading up to orbit. Stephen Brunner with a $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Stephen. Really appreciate the generosity. Who says, Godspeed, Falcon. And we have a new channel member whose name is in Russian, and unfortunately my Russian is non-existent. But really thank you for supporting our channel and for joining at the mission specialist level. Really appreciate that. As well as to Callistia Lee for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. So to our new channel members, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. Have access to those 4K live streams of all of our missions from here at the Cape, as well as discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com, and our member-only videos here on YouTube. Taking a look now at the transporter erector coming up there at the pad. This is part of SpaceX's process for turning around the launch pads in a faster fashion. We've seen this over at pad 40 where they'll bring the transporter erector or the TE fully upright, and the TE we see here at pad 39A is not fully upright, but it has come up significantly since liftoff. We're now T plus 32 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. Just got confirmation of our post-launch interview coming up in the next few minutes, so we're going to go ahead and keep hanging with you live as we're preparing for that interview. Once we do, we'll go ahead and give you a heads up so you won't hear my voice for just a few minutes, but we will come back on live as soon as we have that configured. As we get prepared for this upcoming live interview, I want to thank a few more folks for their support this afternoon. Azimam Ozdogan. Apologies, Aziman, if I just completely butchered the pronunciation of your name, but really appreciate the 22 Turkish lira in support. Who says, have ease with space, guys. Godspeed. Thank you so much for that. Greg P. with a $25 super chat. Thank you so much, Greg. Really appreciate the generosity there. Who says, great coverage as always. Thank you all. Well, thank you for supporting it, helping our coverage be possible. All right, we're just going to get configured for the interview, and we'll be right back. We're going to have a conversation with the European Space Agency's Frank Davina. Stand by. Hey there everyone, Will Robinson-Smith with Spaceflight now, joining you on the other side of a successful liftoff of the AX-3 mission, the quartet of astronauts now heading up to the International Space Station, getting ready to dock, coming up on Saturday morning, and we're very fortunate to be joined this evening by ESA's astronaut office head, as well as the ESA director for the International Space Station. Thank you so much for joining us, Frank Davina.
Good evening.
And so, just want to start at the beginning. First impressions of this launch. I mean, it's always great to see, a crew go up, but from your vantage point, how was it?
No, it was a great launch. We're really happy with the partners Axiom and SpaceX, and of course also NASA to make this happen. For ESA, it's a first that we have one of our project astronauts flying on a commercial mission, and we think this will help us paving the way towards the future as well, looking into a more LEO economy, lowered orbit economy, and having more future missions like this.
And this was also unique in that this was the first time that a reserve astronaut was flying on board this mission. Talk to us about the process of onboarding these 11 reserve astronauts and how Marcus got to punch his ticket first.
Well, we have of course a lot of member states and European Space Agency. We don't have so many missions with NASA within the ISS program because these are long duration missions. We basically have one per year. And we wanted to devise a concept, how can we serve all the member states, because every European basically should have the chance to fly to space. Because of that, we devised, well, if we do an astronaut selection anyway, why don't we, besides the core astronauts that we have selected 5, why don't we also select a number of reserve astronauts from other countries? And if flight opportunities arises, because of course we were talking about these commercial space flights already 5 years ago, if flight opportunities arises, maybe the member states can find the incentive to pay for them, to purchase them, and then we can have more astronauts fly to space. We can have more science, more outreach, more education, and it's exactly what happened with Marcus. He was one of the reserve astronauts, and he's such a great guy, and Sweden immediately said, yes, we need to make him fly to space, and 14 months later, here we are, and he's in space.
Which I believe is the fastest turnaround from an astronaut being selected to an astronaut actually flying, right?
In ESA, I think it's the fastest turnaround, maybe not in the world, that's clear, but from the selection to flying in space, it's very fast indeed.
And of course, you are wearing his mission patch, Munin, which is sort of the opposite side of the coin, if you will, from Andreas Mogensen, who's currently up on orbit right now, the current commander of the International Space Station. For those that are not familiar with Norse mythology, can you explain a little bit about Munin and Andy's mission patch as well?
Well, these are basically 2 eagles, 2 birds from mythological birds. I don't know if they're eagles, but certainly mythological birds. And they were seen in the past as creatures flying to the skies, flying up there and bringing knowledge back to the people here on Earth. And of course that's very symbolic for these missions in the Nordic symbology that we have 2 astronauts from the Nordic countries flying to space, doing science and bringing knowledge back to Earth. So we are very happy that they have chosen these mission patches.
And obviously, once they get on orbit, they're going to be, as a quartet, conducting, 30 different experiments. Can you talk a little bit about the science that Marcus is going to be involved with?
Yes, absolutely. Marcus is going to do about 20 science experiments in the short missions, 80 hours of pure science that he's going to conduct for ESA. It's really a lot. This goes from human physiology, measuring bone density, for example, and how our bones are deteriorating in space. He's also going to do technology demonstrations on orbit. He's going also to look into how can we optimize future stations, future transportation vehicles, space vehicles, so that astronauts can better perform. And how can we optimize the ergonomy, for example, of future spacecraft. So material science as well, technology, 3D printing that we're going to do for the first time. So it's really exciting.
And lastly, just because unfortunately the rain is starting to pick up, thankfully on this side of the launch and not before. But what's coming up next for ESA that we should look forward to, and what you're excited about?
Well, we will have more of these action missions, I think, but then we are also really looking forward towards the first long duration space flight of this new class of astronauts. In 26 this will happen, but that's not so long anymore, so they will be assigned, they will start training, and then of course we are very excited with the upcoming Artemis 2 and Artemis 3 launches, where ESA is providing the service module for the Orion capsule. So even though we don't have an astronaut on the Artemis 2 mission, ESA will be full part of the mission because it's our service module that will bring these astronauts to the moon.
Well, thank you so much, Frank Davina. Really appreciate that, and congratulations on another astronaut now heading up to the space station.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much for watching. We're going to go ahead and stop down for our coverage for just a moment, make sure that the cameras are covered, but we'll check back in with you, close out our coverage in just a moment here. Will Robinson-Smith back with you again for Spaceflight Now. We're T plus 51 minutes, 32 seconds and counting into this mission. We're going to go ahead and wind things down, thank a few more folks for their support before we head on out the door. I want to thank Yusuf Khan for 109.99 Turkish lira. Thank you so much for the support. Gizem Kogula for 219 Turkish lira, who says, "We are very proud of Alper in Turkey. Many thanks for the great coverage. Peace upon the earth." Many thanks again. Well, thank you so much for helping support our coverage. Basak Karasin for 220 Turkish lira. Thank you so much, Basak, who says, "Happy 100 years of the Republic of Turkey." And yes, the launch of Alper comes in the celebration of the centennial, as displayed on the mission patch there. Burkakana Abba for a 44.99 Turkish lira. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Isildur 77, thank you so much for the 10 Swedish krona. Sent up in support, I imagine, of Marcus Wandt. Just had a discussion with Frank Davina about him. Mark M with a £5 super chat saying hello, Mark, Chess, and Debs in Birmingham, UK. Wishing everyone a safe flight for all the missions to the ISS and here on Earth. Weird ALS gifted a Spaceflight Now membership. Thank you so much, Weird. Really appreciate that. And to the person who received channel membership, be sure to thank Weird in the live chat if you haven't already. We have another 45 Turkish lira super chat from Burakana Abba. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that support. Car Wash Channel, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. And last but not least, Debbie Joseph. Welcome to channel membership at the pad leader level. Really appreciate having you with us. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Thanks to all of you who stuck around for the end of our live coverage. Want to thank the folks who helped make all this possible. First off, want to thank the hardworking moderators in the live chat who've been helping to keep the conversation going, as we've got a lot of folks joining in from around the world, very encouraged and eager to talk about this mission. So thanks to all those in the live chat for participating in a lively and vivid conversation. Our thanks to our friends Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions and to Chuck Briggs for helping support with tracking of the Falcon 9 rocket. Our thanks to our wonderful launch photographers as well, Michael Kane and Adam Bernstein, who have already started sending in some of their launch photography. You can see that on our social media on X. You can follow them as well. Adam Bernstein is at ABurnNYC, and Michael Kane is at MD Kane, C-A-I-N, Jr. You'll also find it at Spaceflight Now. Our thanks as well to our editor here, Stephen Young, who is also writing the technical aspects of the show. And most off, thanks to all of you for joining us for live coverage of the first crewed mission of 2024. Lots to come in 2024 on the crewed astronaut side. We've got Crew 8 going up in a month from now. We've got the AX4 mission coming up at the end of the year. Also looking forward to the first crewed flight of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. That's expected to launch no earlier than April. If they're able to have the EVA suit ready, we also may see the launch of the first flight in the Polaris program, Polaris Dawn, commanded by businessman Jared Isaacman, will be making his second flight aboard a spacecraft, or a Dragon spacecraft, after first commanding the Inspiration 4 mission back in 2021. And depending on the vehicle readiness, we may see the first crew rotation mission fly aboard Boeing Starliner, or we'll see another SpaceX Dragon launch on the Crew 9 mission coming up later this year as well. So lots to cover, lots to look forward to, and of course, we don't want to overlook some big things happening tomorrow. We have Japan's space agency, JAXA, is getting ready to land its SLIM spacecraft on the moon. That's coming up tomorrow morning.
And we also have an update on the fate of the Astrobotic Peregrine lander, which was making its way back to Earth today. Unfortunately, because of its propellant issues, it was not able to make a lunar landing attempt. So it is returned from whence it came for a splashdown in the South Pacific Ocean that was set to happen this afternoon while we were very much in the throes of live launch coverage. And also, if you want to have a great or hear a great conversation about some of the big stories in space news this week, including discussions on the Hill with the Artemis program, a little bit of recap on this mission as well, and some other space news highlights, we have our News from the Press Site live show coming up on Friday. That's at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'll look forward to seeing you back for that. And with that, thank you all once again so much for joining us on our live launch coverage of Axiom Space's AX-3 mission, supported by SpaceX with its Falcon 9 rocket. See, the transporter rector is upright, and that means everything's going all right. For Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Be good to yourself, be good to others. We have docking coming up on Saturday, and we'll see you next time. Good night.